Yay, so I'm live. So I'm Petro Diamant. I'm an awareness artist for near-threatened and endangered species, and I'm speaking to Maria Diekmann today, who is the founder of REST Namibia, that's Rare Endangered Species Trust Namibia. Maria, hello.
Hello, it's so nice to see you again.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm all right. It's been a
Yeah,
tough year, but it's been a tough
we have a
year.
lot to talk about. So, we're going to be talking about pangolins. The first time that I met Maria, well, actually, I want to start here. The first time I actually heard about Maria, I was in Namibia. I had just finished some shoots with Lindy Prinsloo, and we were working with the CCF Foundation. And then we were off to work with some rhinos. And then I was at a church bazaar, and somebody said to me, "Well, do you know about Maria Diekmann?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, "Well, she works with endangered species." And I said, "Like what?" And she said, "Pangolin." And to be honest, I kind of had an idea, of pangolins, but I wasn't quite sure whether I had the right animal in mind, right? So I actually had to go online and actually Google it. And gosh, I mean, the journey from there, from me meeting you or contacting you to actually meeting you, to making the art, to coming out to you guys, to having this incredible experience with this incredible animal, it changed my life forever. And I'm sure it's changed your life as well. Yeah. Maria, how did you get into this? I mean, where did rest come from? Because I've never even had an online interview with you. So how did rest start?
Sure, I'm going to have to try and make a really long story concise short. I was actually born in the United States. I don't know if you know that. And I came over to Namibia in 1989 to look at the political situation. I thought that, I was going to go into the White House and, at least onto the Senate floor in politics in the US. I worked for a senator in the US and I wanted to see what was going on in Southern Africa. I wanted to, not be an armchair politician, but really have been to the countries and the region and know what was going on there because I wanted to focus on Southern Africa. So showed up in 1989, and basically the long story short is I never left. I ended up from South Africa into Namibia, and then within about 12 hours, I met my future husband. 3 years later, married, eventually went to the family farm, started becoming a cattle rancher in Africa, and wildlife comes in. And eventually I decided to start an organization for some birds that were very nearby our farm called the Cape Griffon vulture. It's Namibia's most endangered species, a stunning, stunning, stunning bird. Very important. I'll argue with just about anyone that vultures are one of the most important species, if not the most
They
important
are.
species
They
in the
are.
world. They're the preventers of all disease. So yes, we need bees to have a nice diet, but we'll still survive without bees. I'm not saying it would be a good world, but we would survive. Without vultures, I don't know if we would, because of their disease prevention.
Yeah.
So that's basically how REST started in 2000. And then about, gosh, it's got to be about 8 years ago now, I got a call because pangolins were one of the species that we had listed. We called them the Forgotten Five. And I never worked a lot hands-on with pangolins because, you got one and the theory then was you just got it and you released it immediately, anywhere. You just picked a place in the bush and you just released it because nobody really knew what to do with a pangolin in rehabilitation or what their needs were, what the best practice was. There were no protocols. So, I got this pangolin and she seemed to bond with me. I immediately called her Roxy because the only person I could get hold of at that time was a lady in Zimbabwe named Roxy. And she helped a lot with just some ideas and some theories that were totally against what everyone else was saying to do with a pangolin. And this pangolin just started responding really well to it. So I thought, okay, I'm giving us 4 days. We'll get 4 days to get a tracker and put this animal back out in the wild because she's a perfect animal to accept us following her. The problem with pangolin research in the past has been that you can put trackers on them, but they don't like being followed. So you miss a lot of the interesting movements, data, possible marking, any interactions with wild pangolins, any interactions with other wild animals, all of that really key research that we've got no data on. Yeah. So day 2, I went in and she essentially walked up to me and gave birth in my lap. And that was the first time that anyone had ever videoed the birth of a pangolin in Africa. So that was a fascinating journey.
That's amazing. I mean, what a blessing that is, really. I mean, you have to kind of think, like, who gets to experience something like that? It's such a sacred experience to be able to actually witness, you know, the birth of a pangolin, let alone any other endangered animal really on this planet. So
Yeah, birth is the renewal process. You know, birth always gives us hope that we're not at the end of the line. So to have seen that and been able to witness it and, you know, get it on my new iPhone 4, you know, that's sort of what we had in those days, was a fascinating experience. And then because they were in the vulture hive, I moved in there and my research, you know, side of me kicked in and I recorded everything. So we often would walk in the middle of the night. How I did it then, I don't know. If I had to do it now in our thorny bush in the middle of the night with leopards and lions and all the rest of it, but there was a way to document everything. So she would go foraging. She'd always come back to her pup. One day she went foraging and she didn't come back. At that time, we thought that the mom and the pup stayed together for over a year. We now realize that they stayed probably together a much shorter period of time, or at least during the day, a much shorter period of time. I still think they come back together at night. They can't forage together once they get older. But there's a lot of theories that I have that haven't been documented.
And
so that's my journey to starting.
And am I correct in saying that, you know, like, you know, the one reason why everybody was struggling so hard, you know, to get kind of like more support for pangolins was because we didn't have enough data. And without the data, you know, the governments, you know, especially I think the Namibian government didn't really want to take action because for them, you know, they have to have data. And I think this was very, very important work for you to do, was to actually get this up and going so that you could have the data, so you could present this, you know, officially to the government, that ultimately actually led them to also actually take measures, not even to mention what other countries were doing.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, a big part of it was organizations like IUCN. You know, they're the organization, the international body that sort of determines whether an animal is listed as endangered or not endangered. And what they usually ask for from a researcher is proof that the animal is endangered. And with pangolins, we were having a hard time getting that proof. So we knew there was trafficking going on. We had actually no idea to the extent of it, but we were never able to prove that that trafficking was going on from an environmental, you know, in situ, on the ground. But what saved us was that a lot of money started going into confiscations. So on the other side of the world in Asia, they started confiscating things off of boats, mainly looking for rhino and elephant. And what they found was pangolin. So from a conservation point of view, that's really what boosted pangolin conservation and international press, was because suddenly the media was saying the most trafficked animal in the world that nobody knows anything about. So we as conservationists couldn't provide that data, but luckily the trafficking people on the other side could.
Yes. And you know, it was so interesting. And I mentioned, you know, that I actually had to go and Google to actually make sure, you know, what a pangolin was. And I remember, you know, like I had worked with you, and then I had taken my art over to America to go and advocate for pangolins, you know, at, you know, the festivals that I was going to, and basically just speaking to people about it. And I you know, I gathered that, and I think I made the statistics, it was over 80% of people that I spoke to didn't know what a pangolin was. They had no idea what a pangolin was. They didn't know anything about the trade. They didn't know what the scales were used. They didn't know anything, you know. And this is why it's so important, I think, you know, for people to really get involved and do more and do what they can to basically, whether it's an organization or whether it's advocacy or whether it's you making a post about an organization that works with these pangolins or these animals, you know, whatever it is, a sticker on your car, something on your phone, something that will remind you to bring it into a conversation so that you can actually speak about them, you know. This is why I think it's so important to raise awareness.
You know, and all those little things do help. You know, I get little 9-year-old children that say, what can I do? They draw a picture. You know, we're doing a children's book now that is just pictures and stories from children. You know, I love the idea of putting a sticker on your car. Little children dress up as pangolins for Halloween and go around their neighborhood and tell everyone, at least in the old days, went around there, everyone what a pangolin was. So those little things, you know, a report at school, a report at work, just talking to your colleagues. Really, really do help, because they were virtually an unknown animal. And now, obviously, you know, the world is changing. They've gotten some media. Luckily, BBC was the first one to do some really good press and did that wonderful story on pangolins before COVID hit, because obviously, you know, then they got a little bit of negative press. I think probably unwarranted. I think that will be shown as being unwarranted from a research point of view. But at least the
Definitely.
main pangolin, anything they say, there's no bad media. Anything that makes you Google the word pangolin is good for pangolins.
Yes. And I find kind of like, like there was also a lot of violence, more actually sort of violence that came out, when COVID happened, because now, we were blaming the animals instead of blaming, our actions and what we do pertaining to what we do with these animals, right? And guys, I want to say, when I first met Maria and I started working on my art, or basically our phone call, and I had this vision of what the art needed to look like. And I was like, oh, hell no, that's a little bit too, and I was like, anyway, so I did it, and I've had the most incredible conversations, the most incredible journey, and just working, being able to go to an organization such as yours, Maria, and meeting everybody from the volunteers to you, to all these beautiful little animal faces, that I encountered and actually was able to spend time with. It's incredibly rewarding and humbling to be a part of all of this. And I've had conversations about you, I don't know, to other people about you, to I don't know how many people, and you never think that it makes a difference. But then a year goes by or 2 years go by and you get an email or you get a message, or somebody sends you a pangolin, news story, and then I know somebody was listening, and now they're sharing that information. And I remember I actually got called the Pangolin Girl, from one of the brands in Cape Town. So they started calling me the Pangolin Girl, and also Andre was also going, you should actually call yourself Petro Pangolin, or that should be like, whatever. And I thought, no, the Pangolin flower, because I mean, how sacred are they? Their scales are the same thing that's in your nails, and they are being killed as to be consumed as a delicacy. Their scales are being traded because apparently that's good for your hair and your skin and your nails. I mean, what nonsense is that? What nonsense is that?
It gets even worse than that. I've heard rumors in Asia that, women with lactation problems, pangolin scales will help. Children throwing tantrums. And then, of course, the same with rhino horn, males that need a higher sexual experience, which is absolutely ridiculous because, the generic version of that is just to chew your fingernails.
And I always wonder, like, where do these stories come from? And what, it's absolute nonsense. Like, who started all of this? Who was that bored to actually now go and say, okay, well, I'm going to do this now, and look at where the species, look at what's happening. I mean, I think I read a scientific article that said, we give them 2 years. We give them 2 years. If people don't change their ways, and guys, this is really the invitation, I think, is to reach out to Maria and find out what data she has, is to reach out to her to find out how you can get involved to support the organization, is to reach out to learn more about pangolins and their incredible loving nature. I mean, just an incredible, gentle animal. And all they have to really protect them is to curl up in a ball. That's all they have. So easy to take from the wild, so easy to trade. And I want to say, when I actually came out to Namibia, it was quite a story of me getting there and then meeting the right people. And when I started asking questions, it started becoming quite dangerous for me, I realized. Because the questions that I was asking and the people that I was meeting and the information that came to me, I was placed in a position where I couldn't really go further with that. I just had to be the artist, And so my next question to you is, I mean, it's incredibly risky because I know that you get the call and you drive out at night because there's a pangolin that's being trafficked. And I know you, I know how you operate, I've been and you drive out and you now have to go, okay, or you either have to phone the person who has the pangolin. You have to speak and kind of like converse with them and kind of like, set up this trade or whatever, whatever basically comes out from them, because it is a very expensive, very time consuming, very cruel, extremely cruel trade, and very dangerous at the same time because of the value, right? So you drive out, I mean, everybody knows your name, people I'm sure that are in the trade try and kind of like evade you and avoid you, but it is quite dangerous for you to be, as a woman, to go out 2 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock at night, 4 o'clock in the morning, to go and pick up
I will admit that I have put myself in a number of dangerous situations.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, luckily, I've, we've always managed to get through them.
Yeah.
So, it's part of it. It's part of my soul. I can't change. I know there are certain elements that I should change,
Yeah.
but I just,
No.
and yeah, I'm careful, and I've got my ways, and a lot of it is just talking to these guys. A number of the poachers, we want to think of poachers as just absolutely horrible people, and those in the
I think
deep
of
of
the
the trade,
syndicates as absolutely horrible people.
absolutely. And sometimes these people on the ground are absolutely horrible people
They
too.
are.
But sometimes the ones that I'm dealing with have actually called me themselves. They're just people that have caught up. They maybe don't even realize that they're, what they're doing is that bad. And then I've got to convince them to give me this pangolin without paying for it,
Yeah.
which is not always an easy thing. So it can, with Honeybun and her mother, it took me 3 days to convincing these people that it was better to give me these pangolins than to get caught and go into jail. And that was 3 days that actually probably killed Honeybun's mother. That she just was in such shape, but that's what it took to get them. And eventually, at least I was able to save one of them.
Yeah. So, just the duration that I've known you, I know that you were very fortunate to be part of a BBC documentary. You were actually flown over to, to that part of the world to be part of this documentary. And just give me some highlights in the sense of like what was accomplished and what came from that, the good that came from that. And how that's impacted, and how the Namibian government basically has come on board and supported you as an organization, and law enforcement, how their attitude has changed towards, basically ending the trade or trying to kind of like stop the trade within Namibia and also borders.
Well, I think for me, one of the biggest highlights was definitely meeting Ty from Save Vietnam's Wildlife. It's an amazing organization. They are really doing some amazing groundbreaking work, especially in their veterinarian care. They just get better and better and better. So we have a lot to learn from them. The relationship is there now. We can chat back and forth. We know each other's names and personalities, and we like each other. So I think that's a huge boost for pangolins. It doesn't help to work in your own world as a conservationist or if you can't work with other people, this is not the job for you. Because you can't just work with animals. You've got to work with people too. So that for me was personally an amazing highlight. I think in Namibia, at least, I can only speak for Namibia, but I think it's changing a lot in South Africa, Zimbabwe. So in our region a bit too, has been that the law enforcement is really upping their ante. They know what a pangolin is now. They're on the ball. They're committed. From the guy on the ground that's arresting people to the courts. So penalties are much higher. Things are taken much seriously. When before someone get a $500 fine and be out within 3 days, they're now spending years and months in jail. So that's a great one on that level too. And worldwide, I think we're just progressing. The BBC film was amazing for pangolins. Yes, it gave Rest a huge boost, and it introduced this amazing pangolin named Honeybun to the world. And I think she was the best ambassador that could ever have been. So, her job in life was really that film, I think, and so much of the research that we got from her. But that film has been great for pangolins overall. People are falling in love with pangolins.
They are beautiful.
And they're looking up amazing organizations. We're not the only great pangolin organization in the world. There are so many of us now that, it really gives people an option of how to help in their own areas, and different parts of the world. So pangolins scored.
Yeah, that's amazing. Pangolins scored. That's amazing. I like that because I think, I think this is there's so many species that need our help, that really require for humanity to come on board, for humanity as a collective to basically shift our perspective in terms of like who we consider to be food, right? I mean, if we look at, animals across the world, I mean, like, what are we doing? What are we doing to our beautiful planet and our beautiful, diverse kind of like, all these beautiful creatures that we have on this planet, and what are we doing? If you actually start looking in,
Some of our endangered
Yeah, and I always say this, whatever we do to the animals, we do to humans, and whatever we do to humans, we do to animals. They go hand in hand. Maria, so let's say somebody finds out about somebody who's trafficking pangolins, or there's a little bit of information or a little bit of unease, I've maybe discovered something. Who do we contact, in Namibia? Do they contact you? Do they contact authorities? I mean, where do they go to? Because I think most people think, oh, no, I shouldn't really get involved. Or, oh, no, I shouldn't really say anything, but you should say something. So who do they contact? I mean, what are the numbers?
Well, there are a number of avenues. You can contact your local Ministry of Environment and Tourism office. You can contact the police. You can contact me at any time, day or night, and I will put the right people in motion. So, I can't give out everyone else's number, but certainly we're easy to find on the internet, REST, and, any animal, actually, even if it's not an animal that we specialize in, I can usually give people the right context to deal with any situation.
Yeah. So the pandemic, 2020 has been a really challenging year. It's also a year where we lost our friend Honey Bun, and my condolences to you, Maria. I know that, for me, it was very difficult to leave you a voice message because I would start the message and I would just immediately start crying and I would have to delete it, because I thought, so that was been an extremely challenging year in terms of rest, in terms of the amount of work that you've done for pangolins, and especially, the Honey Bun being this incredible ambassador. I've met so many people, that have been involved with rest, genuinely loving, beautiful, kind people, and all of them fell in love with her. Just this incredible experience that you've been able to offer us, and that she is actually, offered as a little being on this planet. There's so much that we still don't know. And I think your research for pangolins in Namibia has to be supported. So that the ones that we still have there can be supported and get the proper medication, get the proper support, get the proper vet, veterinary assistance. What was your take on 2020 when the pandemic happened and pangolins were in the headlines?
Well, like I said,
what did you think?
At first we were very nervous. We were very nervous that because that scientific data that initially came out wasn't a peer-reviewed publication. It actually just went on to regular media. It wasn't a scientific publication, and there were really a lot of loopholes in it. I believe that pangolins were not the go-to between bats and humans. If they were, and if I'm proven wrong at some point, it's because there was an artificial environment. You had a wet market, although there is data coming out now that I just heard this week that there were not even pangolins in that wet market at that time. So that's very, very interesting. I've only heard that secondhand, so I can't confirm it myself. But should there even be an influence? I think that it was because there was a very unusual situation going on there that should never, ever have happened, and hopefully will never happen again. Anytime you put a bunch of different species in, cages and inhumane circumstances, wet, dirty, filthy, starving, everything that you can possibly think of, every adjective for the suffering of an animal in different species, that's what those wet markets actually incorporate. So, that's one element of it. And we actually thought when pangolins were associated with it, there would be a backlash against pangolins. Fortunately, actually, it was a huge support for pangolins. One, because pangolins are not easy to find. So people weren't actively going out looking for them. I think they would have killed them had they seen them, but most people didn't even bother to go out looking for them. And it actually scared people. So I had rhino people calling me and saying, can't you get rhinos on the list too? Because, then people away from the rhinos too, because they're afraid of disease. So in the end, I think, even though it will slowly be proven that pangolins weren't that go-between between bats and humans and COVID, I think it actually benefited. Again, people Googled the word pangolin. And for whatever reason, when you see a picture of a pangolin, they have everything that's not supposed to be appealing to a human. Humans love fur and big eyes and human-like creatures. And, pangolins are just the opposite. They're not cushy. They're not cuddly. They don't generally like people. They have long tongues. Nobody likes them.
Yeah.
The hard scales, all of that should make them unappealing to a person. Yet
Yeah.
all you have to see, and so many of our supporters, I'm just sometimes flabbergasted, have never been to Visit Rest. They've never had that experience that you and I had with Honey Bun, falling
Yeah.
in love with her personality. But they see a picture and they love pangolins.
But they're
So
so
there's something about,
beautiful. They
well,
are
there's
so,
something about odd stuff together that just
yeah.
makes them.
And I mean, the art that I created, I mean, with what's his name? I used one of his models when I 3D printed it, and then we basically printed the scales to add onto the pangolin, because he created this beautiful 3D model. If you go into Thingiverse and you just Google pangolin, you'll reach basically that, and you can print it at home. And I wanted to start something who's saying, like, put the scale back on pangolins, right? Because I've seen these massive graves, and I've seen these documentaries, and it's just horrible. So that's interesting, to hear that perspective from, from 2020 and basically what's happened. But I know that your 2020 year was challenging in terms of getting the proper medical assistance. And I know you have really big dreams, Maria, going into this year and, the following year, for as long as you can, basically to set up the right and the correct infrastructure so that our pangolins, our beloved pangolins, can get more support, right? Tell me a little bit about your plans on that, because I think it's so important for people to come in and support you with that.
Well, I only bought that property 4 years ago. So, and there was nothing on it. That's why I bought it cheap. There was one borehole with water.
Yeah.
There were not roads. There was not fencing. There was not one building. I lived in a tent for the first year.
Yeah.
So I think we've come a really long way. We've got a clinic now. We've got housing. We've got staff housing. We've got not an education center yet, but we're getting there. We've bought a few bricks.
Yeah.
We've got a camping site for tourists and that type of thing. But what we realized with Honey Bun is that we were really lacking some of the veterinarian equipment that we really, really need. And what was a shame with Honey Bun is that we had access to an amazing vet in South Africa, who is by far one of the most amazing vets I know as far as pangolins. She's just absolutely stunning, and she knows so much. But we couldn't get Honey Bun to her. So COVID restricted us. We were trying to get permits. I finally got an amazing flight company to sponsor her entire flight down there, $100,000 flight to get her down there, but we were still waiting for permits. So I realized there was a huge need after talking to vets in Namibia that we need a blood bank for wildlife. I would hate to ever have to be a part of an experience where I felt that an animal didn't get the utmost care that I could have provided had I had all the resources. And that's how I feel with Honey Bun. After her postmortem, we have seen that she had a very bad ulcer and she had this very rare form of cancer. So she wouldn't have survived, but in my gut, I feel that we could have provided more had we had, a vet on site, which we didn't because of COVID, had we had some of the medical equipment, and had we had a blood bank. So, that's my goal now. And I think that's her legacy, is that she's given me the motivation to never, ever quit. I can't let her down. I can't let her legacy down. So, we've done this big fundraiser just before COVID hit, luckily. And we're able to buy some veterinarian equipment. We're talking with the vets. There's a couple of vets from around the world that desperately want to come out and work with us. But restrictions and travel and all the rest of it is making that difficult at the moment. But that's my goal. We need an X-ray machine. We need a gastroscope, which I just got a donor in the United States to give us. We need, a gas machine, and we need this blood bank. We need it desperately. And it's not going to save just pangolins. It's going to save animals in Namibia, wildlife, and potentially even some domestic animals in Namibia, which can't be a bad thing.
I think it's so important. I really do. Given the fact that, that we've caused all this nonsense. That we've basically put up borders and we've put up fences and we've allowed the traffic to get that far, and we've basically polluted the planet to a point where our animals are suffering. I think, the very least that people could do is give more money, more funding, more attention, be more of a contribution towards wildlife and organizations who really support the work and do something like this. And I think what you're attempting is incredibly important. It's incredibly important. you know?
Yeah.
Because what
Well,
happens when
and
we lose the species? What happens when we lose one species, Maria? We lose another species and another species and another species. And I think people don't get that. And I know it's been incredibly difficult for you to speak about that. So I think you're so brave. And I just want to thank you for that, because I know it hits us right here in our hearts. And we don't want to cry in front of everybody, but we will if we must and if we have to. So yeah, you wanted to say.
no, I once heard a great analogy, and it was that, you've got this plane and it's put together with pop rivets. And you take out one pop rivet and the plane still flies. And you take out the second and the third and the fourth, and maybe you get to the 12th.
Yeah.
And you take out that 13th pop rivet and your plane collapses because it's no longer stable. So how many species are we going to lose, and how many species are we in the process of losing before we've actually made our planet unstable?
Yeah.
But in that same regard, there's just so many amazing people out there. There's people that are hitting, that we know, the Sir David Attenborough, sorry, one of my favorite people in the whole world,
Yes.
sending these messages out and making things happen and making changes. But then there's also those 9-year-old little boys that are, telling their little friends at the birthday party not to drink out of plastic straws.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot you can do. It's not always just about money. We had these artists from around the world giving us their hearts and their souls put through their artwork for auction. No one charged us a penny for that artwork, and we were able to sell it and fundraise it. So, people were able to get amazing artwork. Artists were able to get their names out there. We were able to get money for pangolins and our blood bank and medical equipment. And yet everyone contributed. But it didn't kill everyone's hearts and souls and pocketbooks to do it.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, like what I say to people, like being part of wildlife and doing what you can doesn't have to be this dreary, heartbreaking, heavy thing. You do what you can when you can, okay, but do it. Make the decision to actually get involved and participate and support in a way that basically elevates you and inspires you and allows you to do more for wildlife on this planet by reaching out to people like Maria. Maria, I mean, I absolutely love and adore you. I don't know how much time we still have before this cuts out, but this is REST Namibia. So that's Rare Endangered Species Trust. I got it wrong earlier on. So that's Rare Endangered Species Trust Namibia. The website is www.rest, R-E-S-T. What do you have behind that?
Africa.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
restafrica.org.
Okay. All
So,
right. Yeah.
Yeah, we're on social media. You can always look us up. You can contact me personally, rest@iway.na. But everyone can make a difference. And as you say, it needs to be fun. We need to be excited about our wildlife, whether it's sharing cute videos or, just talking to your neighbors. It can be a fun thing and it can be an exciting thing. We have a tree of life and we put leaves on it with our donors' names. And those donors can have given us $10 or they could have given us $1,000.
Yeah.
And, I'm really proud of that. And I think people are proud to have, their little leaf on our tree. I think it's something that makes you feel better about yourself and your part in the world. And I think that's important. And I think it brings satisfaction and peace to people internally.
Yes. And also to do it in a way that really inspires people. And I think, because it's such a heavy topic, right? When you look at it and you know what's going on, it's a heavy topic. And I'm so sick of people saying, oh, I don't want to look at it. Oh, I can't look at it. You have to look at it. You as a human being on this planet actually has to take the time to sit down and look at what's going on and what other people's, that you are part of a collective, okay, because that your own species is part of, and look at what we're doing or they're doing and say, okay, well, how can I be a part of that, and evolve beyond my current what I'm doing, to this planet, and how can I inspire people that are maybe acting out? Not maybe acting out, they are acting out. How can I get involved in changing the hearts and the minds and the habits and the ways and the traditions, which is so important, of other people and other ethnic groups, and how do we do it where we're not blaming and creating more havoc and chaos, okay, but where we're actually inspiring other people, to look at the possibility of looking at a pangolin and really seeing them and really seeing the beauty of this incredible animal and this incredible species and where they fit into the ecosystem and where, how vital their role is and to help our world function the way it does. People, I think we need to be reminded of that.
For sure. And what's been interesting with COVID is it has changed our world. You were sort of a leader. You were already doing this kind of web stuff, interviews, that
I
kind of
can do
stuff
more.
before. But me, I didn't even know what Zoom was until COVID hit. So this has helped our world. I'm going to go to a lot less conferences. I can do it now over the internet. That saves, this and that and economies and petrol and all the rest of it. But it also, I think, gives an interconnectivity to people that never had before.
Yeah.
Yes, we all knew about the internet and maybe we sent a WhatsApp message to each other, but this is actually reaching millions and millions of people that are in millions and millions of different places in the world, different occupations, different goals, different dreams, and yet something brings us all together. And today that's you.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. And, it takes nothing for anybody who's talking about any topic, really, doesn't really matter who you are and what you're busy with, in terms of like your business and your industry. You can take 2 minutes out or a minute out or 30 seconds out online to mention pangolins, to mention to stop the trade, okay, to mention an organization that's actually working with pangolins, whether it's Rest Namibia or an organization, overseas or international, but you can do that. That basically spreads the word. And like I said, not all of us are going to be on anti-poaching teams. And not all of us are going to be in the front line going into these heavy places and rescuing these abandoned and abused and trafficked animals, Not all of us have those skills or that opportunity or that ability to do it because it's hard. But you can bake cakes, or you can have an event, or you can have an online thing. You can do fundraising. You can educate children. And I think that's so important here, is working with our youth and working with children, because when we get that mindset right, we've already won, right? When we get that mindset right, yeah. So Maria, your wish for 2021, before I say goodbye to you, what is your wish for 2021?
My flip answer, please just that it's better than 2020.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I think 2020 was the base.
It's been a really, really rough year. No, but I wish, that we will, hear the word pangolin more, and that we will hear the world, actually, this is my wish, that we will hear the words, our world, more often. It is our world, and we have to determine what's going to happen with it in the future. And we have to make sure that things like this don't happen again. And the way to do that is just to do the right thing. It's really simple. Just do the right thing.
Just do the right thing. Just be a good human being. Just be compassionate and kind. I think, to yourself, and then extend that to human beings, and especially extend that to the animals, and the earthlings and the plants and the trees and the bees and everybody that we share this planet with. So I'm not going to say to everybody where you are at the moment, but you are in one of my favorite towns in the whole wide world that I love so much and I miss so much. And you're busy working on a very special project, and I'm not going to mention it unless you do want to mention it. Yay, yes, no. But I know that Maria...
I'm working on a book. It's a book with pangolins. It's a lot. It's my journey. It's my journey with pangolins. So it'll be from my perspective, and dealing with Honeybun and Katiti and some of these amazing pangolins that I've worked with, and some of the knowledge that we know. So I'm really excited. Yeah, I've taken a little bit of a sabbatical. I had to step away a little bit after Honeybun and Almost Died. It was just really tough. And I realized my life was out of balance with them. I was just so dedicated and 100% to them. Every single night I had to be there. You didn't go out with friends, or, if you did, you left late, and I arrived to every party late and I left early, if I managed. So I'm taking this time for myself. I have an amazing manager at Rest, that's now dealing with a baby warthog and a baby mongoose, and all these animals that we want to get back out into the wild. And I'm excited about this. It's 2021 is going to be a good year. It's going to be a good year because we're going to make it a good year.
Yeah, and I know that we still, from the photo shoot that we did together, we still have images that we haven't used, and I'm going to speak to you about that, because I think there are some images that maybe can be of a contribution to your book at some point when this comes out. I'm very excited about your book. So when this launches and she publishes it, please go and support it, because I'm sure your donations are going to go to Rest, and support of the work that you do. Maria, You're an incredible human being. I'm ever so grateful for your yes to me and giving me this opportunity to work with you and work with Honeybun, and also just the opportunity to have met all your other animals. You know, each one with their unique personalities. I got to spend time with you. We've cried together. I've burst out crying, and I have to say this. I felt, you know, when I first touched Honeybun, I felt like, how dare I touch this incredible, perfect, beautiful, sacred, divine animal? You know, like how dare I, as a human being? I was so humbled by the whole experience. You know, and I wish for people to feel that, like to be so humbled in their presence, to be so inspired and completely in awe of being in the presence of our wildlife. It really is something when you can look at them and look them in the eyes and just say, oh my gosh, hello. You know, I see you, and I'm not here to threaten you. I know that you're not going to hurt me. I'm not going to hurt you, and just really connect with the being that's in front of you. So I want to say thank you to that. It's meant the world to me. It's taken my life into a completely beautiful, you know, journey and path. And I would like to support you more, talk about you more, and definitely when your book comes out, you know, contribute towards that as well. So I want to say thank you so much, and good luck with your book and your holiday at the same time. And if ever you have a message that we need to send out, please contact me and let's get that out to people. So, yeah.
And
I
I
love.
want to say to you,
Ah,
you are one of the easiest yeses and one of the best yeses ever.
oh,
You are just absolutely so beautiful, not just
thank
outside, but inside. You've got one of the most amazing hearts. And since Honeybun, heart and soul, I can tell you that when you worked with her, you know what she said? She said, this is amazing. She
yeah.
loved you. She worked so well with you. She was an amazing animal. She was so special. She was, you know, very different than most pangolins. She just loved certain people, and she just loved you. So thank you for everything you did
Thank you so much.
to
Oh my
raise the
gosh.
profile.
Oh, and,
Yeah.
and you'll be crying. And we said we weren't going to cry, but I just want to, yeah, thank you so much for that. And yeah, it is humbling, isn't it? So I'm very excited to be able to see me. I have makeup on, Maria, so I can't be
I,
crying on screen. But yeah, no, I am. Yeah, no, it is a journey that it's irreplaceable. And guys, you know, to anybody that works with wildlife and animals, it's such an incredibly heartwarming but also a heartbreaking journey, because each and every animal that we work with, and especially to the extent, Maria, that you work with them, you know, which is very much hands-on. I mean, I was briefly there, but with you it's hands-on every single day. You know, like you create, it's family, it becomes family. And yeah, guys, please support people that work with these organizations. You know, be kind. Not every call can get answered, not every animal can get rescued, but with your support and your contributions and your willingness to be a part of it, you know, whether you go and volunteer, whether you donate money, whether you create something that sells and that basically generates money for organizations like this, whether you decide to become, you know, join an anti-poaching team, or just, you know, join a team that goes out and rescues or drives out at least in the middle of the night with Maria, you know, so that we can have you safe and protected and not out there on your own. You know, all of it helps and all of it contributes to this beautiful story of life on earth and life on earth, you know, where we celebrate our hearts and we celebrate the hearts of every single animal on this planet. And that's, I think,
well,
what we need to do, is to
you know,
celebrate them.
I do want to say too, you know, I think one of our most important goals is we watch those animals go wild again.
Yeah.
So yes, they're hands on and you're their mother and you raise them and you love them to death, but you let them go
Yeah.
too, because their place is back out in the wild.
Yeah.
And, you know, people always think that's going to be the sad day for me. That's the happiest day for me. I miss them, certainly, but I'm so, so happy when they go back in the wild. I just
Yeah.
wish Honeybun had.
Yeah, yeah. And not all of it. It's not always possible. It's not always possible, you know. But
No, but when
but
it works, it works, and
but
that's
that's
it's
magical,
good. But
because that's exactly the reason why you've started Rest, is to rehabilitate and release.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. I love you.
Okay, I love you so much as well. And I cannot wait to go and visit you and actually just be there with you, to see, the developments and also just to maybe help as well more. So I'm going to say goodbye. Everybody, please go to Rest Namibia. You can Google them. It's easy, accessible. I'm still crying. It's easy, accessible online. Or if you can't find the information, you go to www.petrodiamant.com and you ask me how to reach Maria, and I will, within a heartbeat, connect the two of you online. Okay. So, guys, be kind and compassionate. Celebrate your hearts. Celebrate the hearts of species on this planet, and really just celebrate the planet and being alive, 365 days a year, and extend that aliveness to live and let live. Okay. Every single day of every single moment, to whoever we meet, to be they human or animal, plant, rock, tree, the river, the air, right? So, Maria, thank you so much. Have a wonderful time, and I'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
Bye.
Bye bye.